Previously on Football, Tactics and Glory.
You failed!
Our trophy room is filled with shameful silver. We've made the first league, but at what cost? Okay, maybe that's being a little bit over dramatic. First league is all perks as long as we can stay there. Something I didn't cover last episode because the episode was running long is that I've upgraded our youth academy again. So we should expect to get better graduates. Bone is kind of low level, not the best stat distribution, but crucially does have the interception skill available, which means we finally have our potential DM long term, which means I can actually sell Mercer now and try and build up Bone to replace Bag when he retires. This episode is being post-commentated. The live commentary for this one was way off in terms of voice balance. So rather than talk too much about the events of the games, I'm going to explain a few things, such as why it took so long for me to record. And it wasn't just the extra effort required to post-commentate this episode, but rather I was actually doing a spreadsheet, a modding tool for people to put together player attributes for real-world mods for this game. And that's where a lot of my energy that would have otherwise been put into playing this game went. And after going through a lot of iterations, I'm really happy with the final product. I will put a link to that spreadsheet in the description. It's based on FIFA attributes and specifically the SoFIFA website. So we're playing Fulham here and actually managed to score a couple of goals, but in what's going to become a recurring issue this episode, I can't seem to deal with the opposition skills. My decision to go with the victory target for sponsors may have been a little bit overzealous, because now that we have our skills trained, so does the opponent, especially at this level. And in this case, it was their AM with cannon shot, which normally would not have been a threat, but because they got corners, they were able to reposition the AM into a better position. So it was a game I felt like we should have won, but didn't. The in-game president has an interesting story to tell about the First League and his previous experiences up here, so I'll leave it on screen for a bit if you want to pause the video and read through. However, as we move on through the season, I'm about to find out that struggle against Fulham was not a one-off. As I said before, other teams in this league have skills and they are willing to use them. Our defense right now isn't fully equipped to handle all of the various skills that we could come up against, and as such we're starting to get stomped, and I'm starting to regret taking the victory target for this season over the match targets. It doesn't help that whenever I got a chance to really turn things around, my players would fail a skill roll. It wasn't just Bag in this episode, it was seemingly everyone, at least for a while. And that wasn't really the case in this game against Norwich. Norwich were just straight up the better team, and I don't think any amount of luck was going to get me a result here. But against Aston Villa, Stardy Fan has a level 2 long pass opportunity, but he fails it, and Villa immediately score down the other end. And my Inertia Drift video picked up a lot of new viewers since the last part upload, I think as a result of the Tour de France being on. So there's some new subscribers for whom this might be the first Football Tactics video they've watched. Welcome. I promise our team doesn't usually suck as much as this. We're just having a rude awakening after moving up to a new league. And in this case, it's going to result in a 3-0 loss. Jack Grealish puts a hat-trick on us. I didn't know if this was the real Grealish because he is a centre-forward in this game, but I checked and it is. We're reaching the point where we'll run into real players more often as a result of the mods I installed at the start of the playthrough. But anyway, that has us staring down the barrel of relegation, far from the top half of the table aspirations I had at the start. And so heading into this derby game with Nottingham Forest, not only are we playing for revenge for the Prestige Cup loss last season, we're also trying to get our campaign back on track. A much better start to this game as Jerd punches through with cannon shot despite the presence of a fullback next to him. But even our successes come with a caveat as not long afterwards Mayland fails a level 2 slide and gets a straight red. So we've got much of the game to hold on to a 1-0 lead with 10 men, which so far it seems we're handling fine despite being bombarded by Forest and injury time being added on at the end of the half due to the foul. Now, I don't usually cover current events in my commentary because it runs the risk of dating the playthrough for future viewers, but since I've got some time to fill in with the post-commentary, I thought it would be a good idea for me to cover Konami's decision to reboot their football franchise as eFootball. And I've heard a fair few people actually didn't like this very much, and I actually have to ask, why exactly? Because to me, the yearly release cycle of sports titles is kind of holding the genre back. And I'll elaborate in a bit, but first I have to address the ending of this game. Forest haven't been getting many chances to score in the second half. They do generate half a chance right at the end here, but it is seen away, and so we do get our first win of the campaign. But back to eFootball. The way I see it, the yearly release cycle is a relic from the days when you could build a game from the ground up in just a year. But as games have gotten bigger in size and scope, it's almost impossible to develop a game, especially at the quality that the big publishers want to make it to, in 1 year. So it has perpetuated the old cliche that each yearly release is the same as the last game, which was the same as the game before that and the game before that. Never used to be the case, but it is these days. By foregoing the traditional yearly release cycle, eFootball has the potential to be very pro-gamer because rather than having to spend full price each year or for an on-the-box feature and a roster update, you can just have one game and enjoy several years worth of incremental updates. And it's being advertised as a free-to-play game on top of everything. Now, I want to pump the brakes. This does have the potential to backfire. We don't know if any of the single-player modes are going to carry over. Maybe it only ends up being a Ultimate Team sort of deal and nothing else. And this is Konami we're talking about. They don't exactly have the best track record. Even so, I am very interested in seeing where this eFootball venture goes. Time to acknowledge the gameplay again. 2-2 draw against Sheffield Wednesday as Fellows sees off this last shot. After the game, specialisation upgrades for Startifant, Draco, and most importantly Ward, the latter of whom will become a universal midfielder. I don't think Ward's ever going to be a regular starter, but you do need players like him in your squad anyway, because if something happens to your starters or they get tired, you don't want to be left up a creek without a paddle, proverbially speaking. Never a good time to run into a team that's won 5 games in a row, though it has to be said that the AI's performance in simulated games doesn't necessarily correlate to how difficult they are to actually play against, due to the simulation's bias towards attributes versus the in-game engine's bias towards skills. Not that it seems to make much of a difference in this game. Middlesbrough do take the lead. We are able to erase that lead fairly quickly with bins, but Middlesbrough come right back and re-establish the lead before 30 minutes have even been played. So, very difficult game for us again. Even though I said attributes aren't that important, they are still important. And later on in this game, that 1-goal lead is going to become a 2-goal lead, which means they've put it pretty much beyond reach, especially when I'm unable to score on opportunities like this. And though I did have the run of the play for the rest of the game, by the time I managed to score with Jerd right at the end, well, it was right at the end of the game. So timer scammed, 3-2 loss, and it looks like that Nottingham Forest victory was a false rise. At least we can try to finish this episode on a high against Bristol City. And as I queue up the highlights for this game, there is one more tangent I want to go on, somewhat related to the yearly sports release and eFootball talk I had earlier. I don't think it's a coincidence that the games that myself and some of my friends have been getting most excited in recently in the sports genre weren't yearly installments, but rather one-off indie-ish releases that receive a lot of post-launch support. So Football Tactics and Glory, of course, but also the Cyclist Tactics. We Are Football is a slightly higher budget game that was recently released and is getting good post-launch support. And if we want to extend it further, Mutant Football League, a game that's a few years old now, but it's a good arcade American football game that has received a lot of updates post-launch too. But here you can see us going 3-0 up in this game, and our offense has actually been pretty good for most of this episode, but the defense has let it down at times. Not the case here though. Even though we do give up a goal towards the end of the game, it's just one goal and we have 3, and we're actually about to make it 4 before the end of the game. So a big victory to, well, I don't want to say momentum, but it's a much better result than what we've been getting, is the point I'm trying to make. And if we look at what that means for the league table moving forward, even though we're still towards the bottom half, we're not actually that far off of competing this season. So if we can get on a bit of a roll in the second half of the season once our players are a bit more experienced, could still make a real run for it this season. The top 2 are pretty much out of reach already though.